and welcome to another episode of Mindset Over Matter. I'm your host, Gabby Gooding, and today I am so pleased to be here with self-love diva Jacqueline Ortiz to talk about something that is relevant to every single person on earth, and that is how and why we can and should reignite a fire in ourselves and find a sense of purpose in our lives. So Jacqueline, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks, Gabby.
Absolutely. So am I. And if I could just provide a little bit of background details about you before we get started, just for our listeners. So as a self-love diva life coach, Jacqueline's specialty is working with individuals who feel like something is missing from their lives, often missing that burning passion and sense of purpose that makes an extraordinary life worth living and celebrating. Individuals who desire to cultivate and elevate their sense of self, power, confidence, and most importantly, self-love. She promotes a synergistic, holistic, and personalized approach, incorporating and integrating mind, body, spirit, and environment to assist in your personal healing, growth, self-love, and empowerment. Just reading that intro alone got me so fired up. Just in advance, thank you for all the work that you do, Jacqueline. That is amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself in your own words to start, and just what inspired you to start this journey to becoming the self-love diva?
Well, it started out, I call it a perfect storm. I used to have 5 different restaurants. Some of them open 24 hours with my ex-partner, who also happens to be my ex-husband. So I was literally working my perfect storm. I was working 80-hour weeks, hormone imbalance, onset of ¿cómo se dice? Adrenal fatigue. Sorry, got a brain. Adrenal fatigue, and then unexpected breakup of the 5-year relationship. Everything happened, everything all at once. So one day, I'm done. So I called my ex-husband, who happens to be my ex-business partner, and I go, I gotta go. He goes, where are you going? I go, I don't know, but I'm leaving tomorrow morning. It was midnight. And I'm like, next morning I pack up everything I can in the car, and I start driving. Now, at the time I was living in Florida, I started driving to, didn't know where I was going. And my mom kept calling me, are you there yet? I go, Mom, I don't know where I'm going to. Are you there yet? She's like, you know how like little kids are like, are you there yet? That was my mom. Are you there yet? I go, Mom, I'm not there yet. I don't know where I'm going, and I didn't want to get there. So I went on a self-discovery journey all the way from Florida to California. And then I drove back, and I'm in Arizona now, which I love it. But basically, it was just like a self-discovery journey that was a perfect blessing. And I discovered so much about myself and to how important it is to prioritize yourself. And that was my journey to just start my life over again. And the one thing I found out more than anything is the most important, most critical, most vital, most fundamental thing in life is self-love. Because when you love yourself, everything just radiates from there. So that was my self-discovery journey, and it was a blast.
That's amazing. And it's kind of sad that it has to come to that extreme, adrenal fatigue and just exhaustion and overwhelm for us to start thinking about, well, maybe we should start taking care of ourselves a little bit more and attend to some of these things. A lot of conversations I've been having lately have been around learning how to listen to our physical bodies. Even, there's a lot of cues that our body will give us, fatigue, even certain aches and pains, and even muscle tension in certain areas, all these little things that we are often too distracted and busy to even notice about ourselves day to day are actually our body kind of screaming for help. And so, it's important to learn to listen to that. And I think the way to really hear what our body is saying is and attend and listen to ourselves is we have to allow time and space for that. And your example of going on your long self-discovery trip was a perfect example of how you finally had time to spend time with yourself, or you finally had the opportunity to spend time with yourself. And I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing, what are some of the things that you learned about yourself during that time, if you remember?
Well, the first thing, if you don't mind me saying, the first thing is I would like for people to understand that most people can't just drop off everything and drop the kids off or anything. And they just can't have the blessing that I had to just run away. I call it run away from home. But they could run away and run into their hearts. They could run in their minds. They could go anywhere they want in the self-discovery journey. They don't have to physically drive off. They could literally just go inside. I call it tune in, tune up, and getting turned on to the high vibration. What I discovered, besides the fact that self-love is the most important thing, it's how critical it is for us. The more we love ourselves, the more of an example and a role model we could be for our children, for our family members, and the community. So I discovered that self-love is really the key to everything. It's what basically, see, what happens is most of us are so busy thinking and thinking and thinking. That's the ego base. But the heart base knows everything, just like you said, which was brilliantly said. Sometimes we just avoid things, we don't want to listen to us, but our bodies are a fountain, a wealth of information. And it tells us everything we need to know. We just don't want to listen because it may not be the convenient timing, or we're afraid to go there because we may discover traumas or things from the past. So whatever it is, the most important thing I discovered was I need to prioritize myself. It's the more, and it's not the selfish thing. The most unselfish thing you can do is prioritize yourself. Put yourself first, because when you do that, you fill up your tanks. Then when you're giving to someone else, you're not giving for approval or validation or acceptance or people pleasing or giving to see what you can get in return. When you fill your tanks up, you are giving from a sense of absolutely generosity because you're so full of love and you're giving from that place. And you can feel that. Have you ever asked someone, oh, can you do this for me? They're like, okay, yeah, and you just feel bad to even ask. But what about when you ask someone, hey, can you do this for me? They're like, sure, absolutely. It's a different sense of giving. So when you're giving from a sense of full love, self-love, you're giving from a sense of generosity, and they can sense that. And it is reciprocated. So that energy that you're giving that love with is totally different when you're doing it from resentment or scarcity or lack or something. So that's why it's so important when you give, you just keep giving. And the more you give, the more you receive. It's a cycle, like an infinity. It's just amazing. It really is.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I just want to ask by your definition, what does it mean to love ourselves? What are the practical things that we should be doing that would actually be a form of self-love?
And you know what? There is self-love and self-care. And the way I kind of separate them, self-care is more doing things externally for yourself, like a bubble bath, a massage, things like that, which is wonderful because you're prioritizing yourself. But self-love, I find it to be more intrinsic and more internal. And self-love, for instance, I think the most important thing you could do is really, really, really love on, and in a good way, love bomb, not in a narcissistic way, but love bomb that little girl in you or that little boy in you, and really pay attention and love it. Have you ever realized, I don't have any children, but if you have like a 2-year-old and they come over, you're working hard, and they come over and they're like, mommy, 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 look, daddy, daddy, look what I did. You're like, uh-huh. And the more you ignore them because you're busy in the computer working, the louder and louder they get until you stop and you say, honey, that's beautiful. Oh, you did that. Wow. Can you go draw me another one? The little kid wants off to just do another one. It's same thing. You just love on your baby girl or baby boy. And that inner child, that is the most amazing, the most important relationship. The most important relationship you could ever have is your relationship with your inner child. And of course, your higher self. I call it the quantum trinity team. I call it QT, which is the inner child, the adult self or the inner self, and then the higher self. And when you have that, you're grounded. You really feel a sense of self-nurturing, self-security. You feel secure and safe. Because can you imagine if you have your little girl or your little boy loving on you, and you're loving on that baby, and then you have your higher self that's guiding you like a GPS, I mean, you are totally set. So that's why I think self-love is really nurturing and having a deep, loving relationship with yourself because you know you're worth it. And
Right.
that's what love is to me, more so than self-care. But they're both absolutely critical to integrate them both.
Right. And so I have a question, and hopefully this will come out right. And feel free not to respond if it's too strange. But I'm wondering, where's the line, in your opinion, between self-love and self-centeredness? Or selfishness, I guess, because I only ask because I've spoken with people who it seems like their definition of self-love, because they say, yeah, I put myself first. This is my version of self-love. But what they're really doing is they're completely disregarding other people's needs around them, and calling it self-love. And so I think there's a little bit of a maybe a misconception or a line, I guess, yes, you need to attend to your needs probably first, but you still interact and engage with people in your family, your friends and things like that. So there is a little bit of give and take, because you have people in your life that have needs as well, like interrelational needs. And so I'm wondering how you think that those two things fit together.
Absolutely. And it's a lot about creating boundaries and what is right for you and also what other people need. Of course, a child or something. But what happens is sometimes people take advantage, and that's when we have to protect ourselves and set boundaries that are healing for us. However, it also could go the other way around. That's you're talking about being selfish. That self-love is totally different from being selfish. Selfish is when you only care about yourself. It's all ego-based. It's all me, 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 me. So that is when it's coming from an ego base. Self-love, when you do it from a heart-centered, and it's all about being in alignment with your heart and feeling good about it. If you're doing things that are harming someone else or something that is just totally inconsiderate or lack of compassion, that's totally different from self-love. Self-love is when you're giving yourself love, like I said, to your inner child, your higher self, and you're giving yourself love because you're worth it, because you're willing to understand that you need to also prioritize yourself. What happens mostly is the opposite. I understand what you were talking about. Some people are selfish, and that's totally different, but that's not self-love at all. That is ego-based needs or narcissistic needs or things like that, that people are calling self-love, because anyone can hijack any label. But self-love comes from being authentic, from being compassionate, empathetic, loving toward yourself, and then also toward others. So if I'm loving to myself and empathetic and compassionate and caring and kind-hearted, then that should, because that's self-love, that should go on and radiate out. When you're doing it from a sense of being selfish, then whatever's coming in is what you're putting out. So that's a whole different story. But again, when you're doing something from heart-centered, that's all you can do and give, because that's what you're giving to yourself. That's what you give on to others. So that's totally different. That is basically hijacking self-love, because self-love is love, is compassion. And the way I see it, everything in the planet is the glue is love. So when people are being mean or not caring about someone else, that is just, they're focusing on their me from an ego ID basis, and it's not the same at all.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a beautiful way of putting it. Thank you. So the way I see it, there's kind of two parts to what we're talking about. One is, and to the work that you do, I think. So one is figuring out what's missing in our life. And then the second part is having the confidence to actually go out and get it and feel like we're worthy of pursuing it. And I think that second part, in my mind anyway, is the more challenging one. So my question is, how do you help people gain that confidence to actually follow their best life?
Well, I think the first thing they need to do is, I have a 6-step process. It's called Extraordinary You High Vibrating Printing System, because everything is about high vibration, because the higher the vibration, the more amazing things you're attracted to your life. And of course, the better you feel. So my 6-step high vibrating printing system, it's all about recognizing what's really what will make you happy. Not from an ego base, going back to the ego base, like I want this, I want that, but really what will make you authentically happy. And then once you recognize that, then you really identify, and it's basically I have 6 steps that we go through. And then basically it's to reframe what happened, rewrite it, rewire it, and reimprint it. And the way I do it is, I like to do things easy breezy, easy peasy, like the easy button, I'm like, oh, there we go. Because there is a lot of things we have to process. And I'm a hypnotherapist as well. So, and a public speaker and a best-selling author. Oh, this is my book, Extraordinary You. So I'm a best-selling author. And what I did was I took everything from that book and also from things I've discovered working with people. And it's all about hypnosis and meditation, because what is really keeping us from really loving ourselves or fulfilling worthy is our subconscious belief. It's all subconscious. 95% of everything is subconscious and 5% is conscious. So you look at it this way, you're doing a tug of war, who you think is going to win? The 95%, which is a big 800-pound gorilla. So basically I work with the subconscious, and it's about re-imprinting a way of being. And it's, of course, because the book is called Extraordinary You, it's about being extraordinary. And basically it takes you through 6 steps. So different modules, different steps, and the steps that it takes you through in a hypnotic way, it goes through your subconscious, it works through your subconscious to re-imprint a brand new way of feeling, so you feel self-confident, self-worthy, self-deserving of really feeling extraordinary and loving yourself. And basically what you do is, besides listen to modules, all you do is listen to it, and it's hypnosis meditation. I call it hype me ups. And it's hypnosis meditation. It takes you through the 6 steps as you're in the hypnotic state. And then in the morning, you have 11 minutes, 11 seconds. You could be doing, oh, I haven't even taken off I always have them on my Bluetooth. Always. I have an 8-hour one, and it's subliminal. And then the spoken ones is state of the art, latest brain sound technology. What you do is you have affirmations that say, I am extraordinary. Then here it's like, what about me makes me so incredibly extraordinary? So you have affirmations, exclamation, you're like, whoa. And then underneath, deepening statements. And then I listen to it all day, every day. And it's amazing. It's just the only time people ask me, really? I go, well, I should clarify that the only 2 times I don't have my earphones on is when I'm taking a shower or being intimate. So those are the only 2 times. And actually, I can't tell you how many of these things I've actually burnt out because I've taken a shower and forgotten to take them off. But anyway, and what you do is you listen to them, and it's like, they're amazing. You listen to them before going to bed, when you go to bed. And it's the easy way, because I think the most important thing is to work with your subconscious, because you could say, oh, I'm going to die all day long. But then a cake comes by or something comes back, and your subconscious goes, you can have one. You can just have a piece, whatever it is. So your subconscious is actually always in charge and control. And that's why it's important to work with your subconscious. And I don't know if you know this, but we have approximately 60,000, according to experts, 60,000 thoughts a day, of which 80% are negative. And of those 80%, 90%, 95% of those are the same ones over and over again. So the important thing is to get into your subconscious mind. And that's what I work with. So it's about working with your subconscious, re-imprinting, rewiring the way you see yourself, value yourself, and feel a sense of self-worth and self-confidence, self-love, and just that's what
No, I love that. And it's so true that, what we feed our minds really affects us so much. And I don't, especially before I think it's maybe a half an hour before bed, and the first half hour when you wake up, they've shown that you're extra influenced, I suppose, by what you're hearing and what you're seeing and what you're experiencing. And so I've noticed this to the point that I don't know if you this will make sense to you. I'm going to share anyway, because nobody so far has been able to relate on this point. But I'm going to tell you anyway. So okay. I've noticed that even when I'm listening to certain types of music with certain types of lyrics, even if it's just playing in the background and I'm not actively focusing on it, I feel a different way. I'm literally in a different mood. Or when I watch different shows on Netflix, I watch, there's like Suits, for instance, with these lawyers and everything. I actually feel extra confident for some reason because they're confident on the show. But then when I watch something like The Office, where they complain about hating their life and going to work, then it seems like those are the thoughts that I have during the day as well. And I don't think I don't know if that makes sense to you or not, but I don't think people realize how much these things affect us.
1,000,000%. Actually, and that's the reason why, like you were saying, about half an hour before and after is when we're most susceptible, because of it's the brainwave that we are functioning at, the therapist. So that's why in the morning that my program has 11 minutes, 11 seconds. I'm all about timing and numerology and stuff like that. So you cross a portal, 11 minutes, 11 seconds. It's with alpha. It puts you in an alert day. Then right before going to bed, it's another one, 11:11, theta brainwaves. So it's because of the brainwaves. And what happens is, I don't know if you realize, because I don't have children, but usually between ages 0 and 7, like little kids, I'm like, oh my God, they remember everything. And they're like little sponges. And that's because they're operating in a hypnotic state, which is the theta brainwaves. That's why the audios I'm telling you about, they have different brainwaves, depending if it's for sleep or for daytime and stuff like that. Because what you said is so true. I gave my TV away to my ex. I'm like, you deal with it. I don't listen to TV. I only have YouTube on because I can choose what I listen to, especially commercials are really toxic. Because have you noticed it's all about pharmaceuticals and medications and this and that? And you go, do you have the symptoms? And you're just like thinking, oh yeah, maybe I do. Oh yeah, but all the symptoms, they're generic, so of course. But no, honestly, you're 1,000,000% right. Because our subconscious never, ever sleeps. Ever. It doesn't sleep. So when you're sleeping, it just keeps going on and on and on. So when you're watching the TV, it could be a million miles away. If you can hear it even a little bit, it's going in. And that's why I was saying with the affirmations and the affirmations, it kind of cancels it out, because you're like affirmations, deepening statements, and it's going in because your subconscious is always watching what's listening to. So honestly, the best thing you can do is monitor what you put in your subconsciously, because we don't realize it, but it does play. Absolutely. With your moods, with the way you feel, the way you think about things, changes the way you think about things too. Everything, because it's just going in.
Yeah. And another, so TV and music are two examples, but I think actually the worst one of them all is social media, because the problem is that, you know, you see something that is relatable. And of course, a lot of trendy things that make it to social media are relatable. So for instance, I'll use the same example as before. Someone's complaining about, oh, you know, I 3 more days till Monday, and, you know, they're being negative about the fact they have to go to their job. Well, of course, there's some part of me that relates to that, because I don't always feel like going to work on a Monday. So I may like it, for instance. And then literally there are algorithms in the background that make it so that I see even more of that content. So I'm basically saying, yes, I relate to this negative feeling, and please show me more negative feeling.
You're so brilliant. Absolutely. Oh my God, I love you. I love you. Absolutely. You're speaking to the choir. Absolutely. I'm like, I have this love, not so loving relationship with social media, because we need to be on it so we can get our message out. But at the same time, we have to be careful when messages come in. And you're absolutely true. And I'll put it in a different way, because what you said was beyond brilliant. I'll put it the other way. What about when we see all those beautiful images on social media, and everyone has this amazing lifestyle, and everybody's doing this and doing that? And for me, I'm staying home writing my book. I'm on my third book. I'm writing and stuff. I'm thinking, everybody's having so much fun except me. And you know what the thing is? They're only showing you what they want you to see. And what happens is our brains, we start competing and comparing ourselves, and then we start feeling bad. We're like, you know, we see them gorgeous and beautiful, sexy bodies, and they're like wearing amazing clothes and go traveling and doing all these amazing things. And we're like, then we start to subconsciously compete and compare. Then we start feeling a little down, and we could feel depressed. And we're like,
Yeah.
and they're only showing us what they want us to see. Behind the scenes, it's not like that.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
So that's the flip side of what you said, but absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And, you know, it makes sense because, like you said, we have these 60,000 thoughts a day, most of which are negative. And that makes sense because biologically, we are wired to notice threats. We're wired to notice negative things for survival reasons. So, you know, just to overcome that biological state of ours by nature, we have to do extra work to overcome the negative and feed ourselves more and more positivity if we can. So, you know, it's not crazy to have positive affirmations and things run all day or half the day or for your morning before you go to work, right? So it's really good that you do that. And I would hope that that more people would, and I'll try to do more of it myself. I do a little bit. I haven't tried the all day thing, but especially at work, it's hard when you're trying to have conversations with people. But for instance, if I have a negative interaction with someone, maybe I go back to my desk and I listen to some positive affirmations, or I listen to some sort of positive content to kind of recenter, right? Because we do get influenced by these negative energies that we encounter throughout the day. And so maybe that's kind of a small way to microdose throughout the day whenever possible, right?
Well, and you're absolutely right. That's why some of them, the spoken ones, you can hear them, but you also have, I have another one, the 8-hour one that I was listening to before when I'm typing and writing. The 8-hour ones is subliminal. So you don't hear anything except that soft, relaxing music. Oh. So that's why I listen to when I'm depending what kind of work I'm doing. Sometimes I can do it, and sometimes I do the spoken. I'm honestly, it's funny because I'll tell you a quick story. I'm in the gym and I'm very hyper and I'm working out. And this guy comes up to me and goes, man, I want to be at what you high on. I want some of that. I'm so naive because I'm like, excuse me? He goes, I want some of that. What are you high on? I'm like, I'm high on life. The guy looked at me like disgusted, like, really? He walked away. So obviously he wanted like real stuff, real drugs. So I'm like, I'm just high on life. And he just could not comprehend. He looked at me like I had two heads. But I naturally am high on life. I'm like literally, and I'm not saying just use mind, but use subliminal from a trusted, that they knows exactly what to say. Because like when I'm a hypnotherapist, so I make sure every single word that goes in there, it's framed and phrased in a way that can only uplift you. And they ask you questions that your brain, there's no way it could answer anything negative because it already assumes it. kind of the law of attraction, law of assumption, and law of vibration together, because we always vibrate. Have you ever walked into a room? Because we think it's not just what we hear, we even feel things. Like you were saying, how sometimes we feel all this body things, emotions. And it's like you ever walk into a room and it could be, everything could be beautiful, but the tension inside the room, and someone had just argued, or people are just angry, or whatever it is. And then you walk out and you just feel totally different. So our bodies are picking up the energy in the room, because we're all made up of energy. What we hear, like what you said with the TV, what we see, what we hear, everything. So we're just like sponges. So it's very important what we put in. It's not important. It's critical. It's vital to our self-love, our self-worth, our relationships with other people, our relationships with the planet, our relationships with everything. It's what we intake. And we're just like radio receivers receiving stuff. And we just have to be careful what we listen to and watch.
Definitely. Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I meant to ask you. So in the work that you do, you mentioned that you focus on mind, body, spirit, and environment, which is a fourth one that not a lot of people include. So I'm wondering, why did you include environment as one of the elements to focus on? Is it kind of just what we were talking about there in terms of what you surround yourself with, or is there something else that you coach to on that?
That the environment that we surround ourselves with, that everything's clutter-free and things like that. I'm also a feng shui consultant. I'm not practicing that now, but I do everything. I'm like a Reiki master. I'm like, I am just in love with energy, because we all made up of energy. And the things we put into our bodies, our mind, our spirit, everything. And the environment, yeah, it's very important to have a clutter-free. And for, like, let's say single people that want to find a relationship, it's so important to make, quote unquote, the space for someone to come in. You know what I'm saying? So that's why it's important. There's so many different things we could do about Reiki, feng shui, but it's just basically environment that nourishes you, whatever that is. Whether it's clean, whether it's the colors, the scheme, everything else, that when you walk into your space, you just feel happy and joyful. And everything with, and the thing is, I'll tell you real quick, most people think we have 5 senses, and we do, and they're very important. But for me, the 6th sense is the most important. Actually, I think it was the New York Times, the scientists just said, oh, they discovered we do have 6th sense. I'm like, duh, we always had it, you know what I'm saying? But now they're willing to go public with it. I think it was the New York Times that I read it in. Anyway, so we have a 6th sense, and people think, well, you kind of dismiss it. The most important sense is what you see, what you hear, what you touch, blah, blah, blah. And it's not, because when we're babies, when we're born, the embryo, the first organ is the heart. So the heart is what's tied to our intuition. So the more than our fingers or our eyesight, anything else, it's the heart, it's the organ. That's our first, and it should be our foremost. So that's why what you were saying was beautifully said about our intuition, how important it is. You know, we dismiss it because we think it's not real, you know what I'm saying? But that's more real than real if we learn to get in tune with it and really focus on it. And it's your heart. It really is. It tells you everything you need to know. And if you let your heart rule your mind, not the other way around, it's amazing, because the mind is like an iron fist. It's always trying to tell you what to do, like a hard taskmaster. You got to do this, you got to do it. The ego base. Oh, I don't know if you know, they literally found a spot in your brain. They found the research that there is a spot on your brain, a part of your brain, that it's the ego. People used to think it was like kind of like abstract, like what is the ego type of thing. Well, it's a default mode network. There's a part in the brain that they actually found the research very recently, and it's actually a thing, you know. But when we're controlled by our minds, like we said, 60,000 thoughts, 80% of them are negative, 95% of the same thing over and over again. Can you imagine? It's like we're going crazy, listen to all this stuff. But meanwhile, when we drop into our hearts can lead us with an open-hearted versus a heart-centered versus an iron fist. And that's what self-love is ruling yourself, leading yourself in your body, in your mind, your heart, and your spirit with love, with compassion. That's self-love versus selfish, which is a lot of the ego base, because the ego, it has to be about me, 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 me. That's ego. That's not self-love. So back to your question, full circle.
No, absolutely. You're so right. And I think it's such an important thing to learn to listen to your heart or your intuition, however you want to word it, because I think every person on this planet has had an experience where they had a gut feeling, but they reverted to just the pros and cons that we usually go by in our minds, very cognitive. And then after the fact, maybe they made the wrong choice, and they will say legitimately that they knew that was wrong. They're like, I knew it. I knew I should have done the other thing. And they don't listen to that, because I don't think we're ever really taught to follow that, right? And it's so much easier, and you can, a pros and cons list, you can see. You can write it down and you can look at it, and that's one of the five senses that are like socially acceptable to listen to. And yet when we can connect to our intuition, we just are so much more aligned with the decisions that we make. And I think that alleviates, just thinking about it, I'm already feeling like lighter, because you feel this alleviation of stress and worry and everything, because it just is what's aligned with you. So thank you so much for addressing that. And I just wanted to go back briefly, just because I heard something and I want to see if it's something that you know about, since you know about feng shui and these kinds of things. But a while ago, it just regarding our environment, let's say at home, I heard, and then I tried this out myself, and I do think it works. But I heard that if you are feeling stuck in your life, and maybe you feel like you're just going through the motions and going, through the same routine every single day, and yeah, that sort of stuck feeling, pay attention to literally your patterns of movement throughout your home, and because you go to the same places, right? If you actually had like footsteps that were traced, you would see you probably come in, go to the fridge, maybe you go to the couch, then eventually you go to bed, to the washroom and back. And so the recommendation was to actually take up a different space in your environment. So literally pick a spot in your home that you don't usually hang out in. And it might be like a corner somewhere that usually is just unattended, or maybe you have a guest room that you don't usually go to or something, and just sit there and just be there and take up the space. And you will actually feel an energetic shift a little bit within yourself, because you're breaking the literal physical pattern of energy flow throughout your home. So I don't know if that sounds crazy, or if that sounds like it makes sense to you.
You're talking to me, hello. No, actually, that's brilliant. I would for first and foremost, I believe everything's intention. So before we do that, we set the intention why we're doing that, and set intention, really focus on that. And also, like you said, maybe move the furniture around, so that way you have to go in a different way. And what that does is clear the energy. It changes the energy. Remember we said before about the way you walk from one place to the next and stuff like that? Exactly. So first, set the intention. Second of all, make sure everything looks beautiful in what's beautiful for you, and the environment makes you happy, whether it's putting flowers or a candle, whatever. Or if you burn sage, especially in the corners, because what happens is the corners are usually called stagnant energy, because people don't go there. Like you said, they go in the middle of the room, but they don't go to the corners. So if you move stuff around, you can move stuff around there and set the intention. You could do it with feathers. You could do it with a candle. You could do it with sage. Sage is even better, but my fire alarm goes off all the time, so my neighbor's going to kill me, so I can't do it anymore. Like, anyway, so bottom line is, yeah, and absolutely, it does work, because everything's intention. So you put your intention, B, move stuff around. Corners are very stagnant. We need to move the energy around and go a different space. And like you said, if you haven't been in that space in a long time, it brings in your energy. So when you're walking into that room, like a guest room, you walk in there first, before you get there, you set intention and fill yourself up with positive energy and vibration. So that's what you bring into the room. You know what I'm saying? So absolutely. Yeah, we always have patterns. We always do the same thing day in, day out, over and over again. And when we move things around, you just like, and it even wakes up your subconscious, because your subconscious is an autopilot. And that's what it is. It even wakes it up. It's like, wow, something's different. Wait, I have to actually focus, think, do something different. What's going on? So it activates different parts of your brain. So yeah, absolutely. No, it's brilliant. I would absolutely recommend you do that. And first and foremost, set intention, but also see what in your house or in your apartment, or your room, or wherever, your office, anywhere you are, that you can move things around. They even recommend also, like, at least most people go the same way to the gym, same way to work, same way to the same thing. Take a different road, and you will see different things and change your energy, and it will make you focus, because you're driving from point A to Z. People say, oh, my mom goes, I don't want to be hypnotized. I may never wake up. I go, Mom, you get hypnotized every single day. She goes, what are you talking about? I would never do that. Now she does, and she loves it. But I go, Mommy, every time you drive from one place to another, you don't know how you got there, you were hypnotized. That's your subconscious operating. So you need to change things around to wake up, to get energized, revitalized, rejuvenated, just the energy shift. Everything's energy, everything.
Yeah. Well, our brains only really attend to novelty, right? We have, because it makes sense, because if we responded to every single stimulus around us in any given day, like we would literally explode because there's so much going on, especially in a big city or something. Like, it's impossible. We're so overwhelmed with different stimuli. So we learn to, anything that's familiar, we learn to just drown out, because our brain has deemed it as safe enough. We can still go ahead and get to work the way that we usually do. But as soon as something's out of the ordinary, then we have this orientation reflex that kind of draws our attention to it. And that, like you said, wakes us up. It kind of engages the brain in a new way. And so that's a great way, just little tricks and hacks, throughout the day, take a different route. They've even shown, as a side note, that performing a task in a different way will help protect your hippocampus, I'm pretty sure, in your brain, and prevent things like memory loss and aging of the brain. So as an example, if you typically, super simple example, it's the first one that came to mind, but you eat your meal first. Let's say you're having dinner, you eat your dinner, and then you have your dessert. Well, if you have your dessert first, that's just doing things a little bit differently, right? Or, brush your teeth with a different hand, or, yeah, just these little things where it's like, oh, well, we do it the same way every time, because for whatever reason. And it's actually doing things differently that re-engages our brain, because now we're basically trying to turn off this autopilot that keeps us going. So there's so many benefits to thinking about it that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Jacqueline, I'm just looking at the time. I feel like it's been 5 minutes, but it has not. You're so lovely to talk to, and I feel like we could talk forever. But I just do have one last question. Well, two last questions. But I wanted to know, is there anything that you wish you had known earlier in life, whether growing up when you were younger or just earlier in your life in general, that, would have helped deepen your relationship with yourself or helped you make any progress on all of these things that we've talked about today?
And it goes back to, I wish I know more how critical self-love is. It really is. I know I don't want to harp on it, but it's everything, because it affects every choice you make going forward. It affects your sense of self-value, it affects the schools you go to, the colleges, everything. I mean, I would have just had a deeper loving relationship with myself and a deeper respect for myself, and it would have made different choices. So if I had a child, which I don't, but if I did, the most important thing is to teach that child that to be resourceful, not to listen to everyone and everything outside themselves, but just go inside and really be internal and see what's best for them, or for me at that point. What is best for me, and go for my heart instead of my head, because my head is just the ego talking to me, and the ego can only go in the past. It doesn't have any other way of finding things. So any solution that you want, it's never in the past, because you've been there, done that. It hasn't worked out for you, and that's the only way the ego functions. However, when you get present with your heart, that's why the heart is so important. When you get present with your heart, that's where you open to the infinite possibilities, because you're tapped into the consciousness of everything. So I would have told my little girl, I love you. You're so incredibly special, and we're going places. And I would have had deeper connection and reassure her and encourage her to be the best that she could, rather than just letting outside people things tell me how I should think or feel or what I should decide.
Yeah, that's so lovely. And the good news is that we can still have those conversations with our inner child, our younger self, right? As we start to try to heal and grow even in our adult lives. And for anyone listening who has kids, that's still good advice. Even though you and I don't have kids, it doesn't mean that, our listeners can't benefit from that kind of advice. And, it's tough, because it's always easier to just do what other people are doing or coast through life. But, my biggest fear, I don't know where this came from, but my biggest fear for the longest time has been just coasting through life and then getting to, my midlife and having a crisis, because I finally got to stop and think back on whether this is really the life that I want. And to me, I think time And mental space is what's required to start thinking about these things. And I think maybe that's part of the reason why people don't have these realizations until their midlife, in the typical lifestyle that I see in my circles anyway, which is, you get out of high school, you go to college, you get one degree, probably two nowadays. Then you go and start your career, and then you're hustling to try to climb the ladder, and then you're trying to buy a house, and then you have all these timelines on things that you're supposed to do. And then finally, when you're established, you can stop and breathe. And usually that's around your midlife years. And then you actually have the time and space to say, you know what, I can actually take a break and think and look around at the life that I've created. But I don't know that those lives get created as intentionally as they could be. And that's why I am trying to personally take opportunities to stop and to reflect and to connect within myself, so that I can build and craft an intentional life, and not just find myself in some kind of life by accident, right? Because then you're not happy and you're not feeling fulfilled.
And that's exactly what I talk about. Is literally going from where you are to create an extraordinary life, that juicy, passionate, purposeful, joyful life that you love, because you only have one life to live, at least in this lifetime. So you have to make it the best. And there's a quote, which I'm going to butcher right now, but my biggest fear is not dying. It's not having lived.
Right.
Completely. And that's why I believe it's so important for us, like you said, to live with intentionality. What is it that's important to us? And that's when we have to stop the ego and go deep within and go into your higher self and your inner child and your heart. And just like I said, in alignment, what is it that you really lights you up, what fires you up? And that way you can live. Can you imagine playing full out like that, living life like that? That is heaven on earth. Yeah. It's not up there or down there, or whatever people think or whatever. Heaven and earth, it's when you're living your full life, a life worth, like I said, living a life worth living and celebrating. That is what is a juicy life. Wow. So I love what you said. You're absolutely right. You're brilliant. Brilliant.
Well, what a wonderful place to, I think, wrap things up. The last question that I do want to ask is, where can people go to learn more about you and your work and the different things that you're up to?
Oh, okay. Awesome. The selflovediva.com, my website, selflovediva.com. And if you might buy for a gift for everyone in the audience, would that be okay with you?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, it's extraordinaryyou.com/free gift. So extraordinaryyou.com/free gift. And what they get there is they get the hypnosis and hype me up, so they get to listen to, and the free audio. So they get a taste of what the audios are like. The 11:11 portal morning, 11:11 night, the 1 hour spoken, the 8 hour one, and the hype me up. So they get all that when they sign up, and it's all free. And I think it would literally change your life, because I told you, like that guy at the gym told me, he goes, "What are you high on?" I'm literally high on life. Literally, I wake up like, I can't do my interviews like right now standing up, because I get so excited, I get out of frame. So I had to force myself to sit down. Seriously, because I remember doing an interview, I was like all over the place, and they're like, "Where is she?" I'm like, "Okay, stay here," because I wake up like this, high on life. And that's what I want for all your audience, and for you, and for everybody. So if they sign up for the free gift, they could get a taste of what it's like to really feel extraordinary. Seriously, I'm not even kidding. It's free. So just, go for it.
Worth a shot, right? Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for this conversation, Jacqueline. It's been so lovely. And, conversations like this fire me up. So thank you for being a part of me trying to live my extraordinary life. It's been such a pleasure. And I do like to also thank our listeners, as always, for their time and attention as well. Please make sure to check us both out online, and subscribe to Mindset Over Matter, so that you don't miss out on more amazing episodes like the one we had today with Jacqueline. So, Jacqueline, thank you so much once again, and take care.
Thank you.